朋友们，近日美国著名的智库战略与国际研究中心，也就是 CSIS 人工智能专家 Allen 发布了一份题为 DeepSeek 华为出口管制与中美 AI 竞争未来的研究报告。那么，作为前美国国防部联合人工智能中心的战略和政策主任，他的观点和研究在业界引发了广泛的关注。这个专家影响力不容小觑。黄仁勋曾经专门腾出时间拜访 CSIS， 在美国智库的意见能在很大程度上左右华盛顿的政策走向。身处科技战前线的黄仁勋自然深知这一点，他上来就是一顿彩虹屁，并且明确表达了捐赠的意向。随后呢，他话锋一转，表示有一个小同志严重拖累了智库队伍的整体水平，建议清除出去。这个小同志不是别人，正是 CSIS 高级研究中心主任 Allen， 也是美国芯片出口管制政策的坚定鼓吹者。面对美国的打压，英伟达似乎比中国公司还着急。黄仁勋曾经一直在竭力地阻止相关制裁的落地。那么这个小同志的报告详细阐述了 DeepSeek 的起源、成就，以及对未来人工智能和半导体出口管制政策乃至地缘政治的潜在影响。阿伦认为中美刚进入第三局的下半场，尽管 DeepSeek 的成功动摇了美国 AI 霸权的基础，但是只要加以改进，美国仍然可能在和中国的人工智能竞争中占据优势。尤其要从以下2方面着手。一个是防止大规模的人工智能芯片的走私，其二是阻止华为和中芯国际团队替代英伟达和台积电生产国产 AI 芯片的替代品。他认为DeepSeek 的创新主要是在算法和架构，很容易被美国公司复制。其实已经有很多美国公司在效仿 DeepSeek 了，但 DeepSeek 难以复制美国的人工智能芯片和算力的优势。如果没有出口的管制，可能中国 AI 发展早就超过美国了。所以英伟达或者说美国 AI 界真正应该惧怕的其实是华为、中芯，而不是 DeepSeek。这个小同志呢，近期接受了一档采访，深入谈到了中美 AI 竞争的种种细节。他的观点影响并且代表了美国智库学界甚至政府内部相关战略的制定。我们来看看他是怎么说的。
Oh, I think we're at most at the bottom of the third.
Wow.
The AI story is still unfolding. And just because every single inning has continued to be shocking doesn't mean we're done yet. When I think about the DeepSeek news and its impact on NVIDIA, there were 2 big arguments out there. One was the idea that, oh my gosh, if we can be so efficient in using these models, then maybe we need fewer NVIDIA chips. That was obviously a garbage take.
Yes, right.
Indeed, in AWS cloud provisioning of GPUs, the prices went up that week,
Wow.
right? So as soon as people said, wow, I could be a lot more efficient in using these chips, they wanted more of those chips, not fewer of those chips. But there was a second line of analysis, which is, what about the competitive moat that surrounds NVIDIA? Is NVIDIA really the only game in town? And that's what I dove into with this paper, which is about the potential alliance of DeepSeek and Huawei to create an alternative chip ecosystem that could finally achieve the relevant network effects, the relevant economies of scale, to be a credible competitor to the NVIDIA CUDA software moat.
Wow, this is a horror movie in the making. In that world, are we talking about a competitor that's still using NVIDIA chips by routing them around some third party or something, or in fact working with Taiwan Semiconductor to illegally make chips using technology they shouldn't have? Because you touch on that.
This is a big problem for the export controls. So if you remember, we don't want China to have advanced AI, so we're not going to sell them advanced AI chips. That means we also have to not sell them the equipment used to make those chips, but we also can't let them rent that equipment from places like Taiwan, TSMC. And it turns out, what we deduced in this report from sources that I spoke to, that TSMC made more than 2 million advanced AI chips for Huawei. Now, this is the Ascend series of chips, which Huawei's chip designers have been working on for a long time. And SMIC, a company in China, is trying to manufacture them, but struggling mightily. So that Assist from TSMC, which is great at making advanced node logic semiconductors, getting 2 million of these chips from them is a big, big leg up. Now, that's not the end of the story. NVIDIA can still compete. They still have strong advantages. Their chips are not only higher performing, but they're backed by a much more robust software ecosystem, which makes it more desirable to develop on these chips. But if I was NVIDIA, this is the part of the DeepSeek story that I would be concerned about, not the efficiency gains.
Or if you're the Trump White House, should it not be as well? We're cutting deals with TSMC to make foundries here. When what? Should we be sanctioning this company?
U.S. policymakers were enraged to learn this news, and that was the right response, right? We don't want our allies, people who are under the U.S. defense umbrella, providing national security critical capabilities to China. And that's what's going on here. Now, TSMC, of course, they'll say that this was a shell company, meaning that we didn't know it was Huawei, it was somebody pretending not to be Huawei. But when you're making 2 million advanced node semiconductor chips,
amazing.
What kind of due diligence practices do you have in place if you can't detect a sale of that size being Huawei in disguise?
Well, so then, yeah, what do we have in place, and what does this mean for export controls? This is like a joke?
So the Biden administration,
this
actually happened in the Biden administration era when these chips were being manufactured, and they introduced a new rule called the Foundry Rule, one of the last actions they took on export controls before leaving office. And it effectively moves all of TSMC from a blacklist model, you know, the entity list, you're not allowed to sell to Huawei, you're not allowed to sell to X, to a whitelist model. You're only allowed to sell to the good guys, and we will tell you who the list of good guys is. So the idea that Huawei could just create another shell company called, you know, Happy Chip Co.
Done.
Doesn't matter. You're not on the whitelist. It doesn't matter if you promise not to be Huawei.
I see.
And any new companies are going to have to be reviewed under a very diligent thing. That's the mess that TSMC has gotten itself into. This failure was so big that things are never going to be the same for them in terms of doing due diligence on new customers.
Incredible to think that this is going on here. And if you're Jensen Huang, you're wondering about the security of your own IP here, of course. Right?
Yes, I mean, NVIDIA has been the victim of major cyber attacks that got pretty dang close to the crown jewels. Now, counterintuitively, these were not even state-run actors. This is reporting done by Wired a few years ago. These were folks who just wanted to use NVIDIA chips for Bitcoin mining, and they were mad when NVIDIA adopted a policy prohibiting that, and so they started cyber attacking NVIDIA and saying, we will release all your critical intellectual property until and unless you lift this Bitcoin mining ban.
Right.
I mean, that is shocking that just a cyber criminal outfit was able to get so close to the crown jewels of NVIDIA. Right. It makes you wonder when we're dealing with a nation state such as China, and they have their crosshairs aimed at NVIDIA, at OpenAI, at everybody who has really valuable AI intellectual property, it's a big challenge.
Boy, this is all pretty scary stuff. We're going to go into overtime with you. You don't have to leave yet, right?
No.
Because this is too important, and our listeners and viewers find this incredibly compelling. When you consider the findings that you have made here, it also suggests that this whole DeepSeek revelation was based on theft. Is that not the truth? IP theft, actual hardware theft? Otherwise, it wouldn't have taken place. But you're saying that doesn't matter. They still did things with these tools that are worth our attention.
So this is what's interesting. The trope about Chinese tech companies used to be they cannot innovate, they can only copy.
That's right.
I think the right way to think about DeepSeek is they copy when they can and they innovate when they can. It is an all-of-the-above approach to competition with the United States, and that's what makes it such a real challenge. Now, if you're somebody like NVIDIA, you see DeepSeek making highly efficient AI models. That's great. That means more people are going to want to use your chips. If you're NVIDIA, the real threat is Huawei, because Huawei has advanced AI chip design that they're trying to get the Chinese government to force everybody to buy on. Because NVIDIA would love to still sell in China. They have to sell a degraded version of their chip that's legal under export control law. But Huawei says, we want the Chinese government to not even allow us to buy these degraded NVIDIA chips. We want them to force Chinese customers to buy buy Huawei chips. So now you're down to what is the actual competitive advantage of NVIDIA? And it comes down to software. NVIDIA, the reason why they're worth so much money is not that their chips are so amazing. If you look at an AMD, which is an American competitor of NVIDIA, and an NVIDIA chip, they're both great chips on the hardware side. Where NVIDIA has a massive edge is on the software side. Everything is compatible with NVIDIA chips. They're backwards compatible. They're forwards compatible. All the big AI software development environments are compatible with NVIDIA. And if you leave NVIDIA chips, you have to leave that happy software ecosystem, and all of your software starts breaking. You have to create a bunch of new stuff from scratch. That's what's dangerous. And that's what Huawei wants to attack, and what they would love to use DeepSeek to jumpstart. Can they get DeepSeek to start developing attractive AI software on the Huawei ecosystem, to start building some critical scale economies, network effects in this alternative ecosystem? That's what NVIDIA should be worried about on a 2-year time frame, on a 5-year time frame, on a 10-year time frame.
If you're Jensen Huang, this is a real bummer because you wish you could sell your chips to Huawei or have that market, right? But if it were shut down, if China were cut off, and it's pretty close to being there already, I guess, for a company like NVIDIA, as opposed to some of the others that make lower tech chips, wouldn't the company continue to grow at an enormous rate? We're going to hear about backlogs, right? We're going to hear about a pipeline. We're going to hear about Rubin, Blackwell Ultra, that they can't make them fast enough.
Exactly.
So who cares about China if you're NVIDIA?
For every chip that comes off the assembly line, designed by NVIDIA, there are 10 people saying, please let me buy that chip, because they are supply constrained. They are not demand constrained. So that is the current situation that they're facing, and it will continue to be the situation for many years in the future. It's really, if you're thinking about the long-term thing, and remember about NVIDIA's valuation. Almost all of the value in the stock price is the terminal valuation, not the 5 next years of cash flow generation. It's what they think is going to be the future. And NVIDIA is saying, right now, we have these competitive dynamics in place where it seems clear that there could not even be a company that could give rise to an alternative ecosystem that's anywhere near as competitive as ours. And if they're looking at this Huawei DeepSeek alliance for the first time, they're seeing this is not much right now, but this could grow into something pretty significant.
This is incredible. I had a very smart analyst suggest to me that when NVIDIA rolls out Blackwell Ultra this week, that we shouldn't be taken by this. It's just another very expensive chip. When NVIDIA starts putting forth new cheap chips that do this, that's when you have the breakthrough. Is that true?
Well, I think they're doing both things simultaneously. I mean, they have the chip that costs hundreds of dollars, and they have the chips that cost tens of thousands of dollars. And overall, I think they are still competitive in both markets. What your analyst might have been talking about is NVIDIA's gap in mobile, right? If you think about the next generation iPhone, it's going to have Apple Intelligence on it. Is that being delivered by NVIDIA chips? No, it's being delivered by chips designed by Apple. And if you think about that, NVIDIA is dominant in the data center. They're very strong in PC. They're very strong in laptop. But on mobile, that's sort of the question mark for what does the future of intelligence. And Qualcomm would love to say, we're going to win. Yeah. Apple would love to say, we're going to win. Sure. But the future is unwritten here, and that's the question mark for NVIDIA.
All right. Spending time with Gregory Allen here from the Wadhwani AI Center, CSIS. On Balance of Power. It's such a great conversation. We wanted to bring this into overtime for you when we consider where we're going here in our remaining couple of moments with the future of AI and what this means for the Trump administration. You're laying out some really important ideas. Is this White House capable of embracing them and turning it into policy?
So I think this administration, if you look at who they've hired, especially in roles that are relevant to export controls, that are relevant to technology competition with China. It is technology. It is China hawk, China hawk, China hawk, China hawk. I mean, the most hawkish people in the Biden administration, people I know in the Trump administration said, they would be a dove compared to the kind of folks that we're bringing in here. But there is a question between political will and government capacity. And if you look at the organization that's in charge of enforcing export controls, they're looking to cut staff right now when what they should be doing is increasing staff. And then secondarily, if you look at the Department of Justice, the group that has the specific responsibility for enforcing export controls, that group has just been disbanded. And the Department of Justice has not yet said where those duties and responsibilities are going to be divvied up. So we are in a position where we have bet the farm on export controls as a critical means of technology competition with China, but the government capacity to execute that strategy is being removed, and there's no plan right now to what's going to bolster it back. So I'm really urging folks I know in the Trump administration, fix this. We need a stronger government ability to do this. This is not a great place for like money-saving cuts, because you're going to save pennies and you're going to lose hundreds of billions of dollars in American, value.
This might have to be our next conversation, because this is incredibly important right now, the extent to which the administration is paying attention to this, because it has so many plates spinning at once. Let's get back to the toy store quickly before you leave. In our remaining moment here, you say we're at the, I believe, bottom of the third. We've heard a lot about reference turning to inference. What's next? What is the next breakthrough that we need to see in AI?
Well, I think so far we've seen AI become increasingly capable at generating text that is actually of value. Recall that Sam Altman said in early 2024 that the performance of his system was, quote, mildly embarrassing at best, right? That was not that long ago. Now he's saying it's among the top 100 programmers on planet Earth. You've seen that the hirings for people who are generating computer code are way down, as people are realizing that these systems can generate extremely high quality code almost instantaneously. So the labor market disruptions from AI, they're here now. And as those capabilities first go after engineering-focused tasks where formal verification is possible, they're going to spread to ever more parts of the economy, and that's going to lead to a wave of adoption of AI and generating real value. It's not a toy anymore. Now it's really solving business problems. So that's what 2025 is.
We're beyond the toy department at this point. You have 3 young kids. Will they write all of their school essays using AI? How does this not take over everything that we do that's driven from an intellectual point?
I think it's really worth asking. I mean, one thing that you could tell yourself is, in the 1950s, there was no such thing as a job called a programmer, right? As we created new technologies, we created new jobs associated with those technologies. But we do have to ask ourselves the question, as these things become more and more capable, and to use the words of folks like Sam Altman or other folks, these are going to be capable of doing anything that a computer can do, anything that a human can do in front of a laptop. That then begs the question, what are the next jobs? What is the future of education?